The mighty Vatheri Empire had conquered dozens of planets across the galaxy. They were ruthless, powerful, and feared by all. No species had ever stood against them for long. Their queen, Citrus the Dominator, ruled with an iron grip. She had seen civilizations crumble before her fleets, their warriors begging for mercy. And now her gaze was set on Earth. The humans were an odd species. Unlike other civilizations, they did not expand aggressively. They sent messages of peace into space. They spoke of art, music, and cooperation. Their history was full of wars, but now they seemed soft. Citrus watched recordings of human broadcasts, diplomats shaking hands, leaders talking about unity, scientists discussing the mysteries of the universe. She saw no warrior culture, no instinct for survival. "They are weak," she declared, her voice echoing through the grand hall of her warship. Her generals nodded in agreement. The Vatheri respected strength, and humans showed none. They had not conquered their own solar system. They had no massive battle fleets. Their weapons were primitive compared to Vatheri technology. "This will be easy," Citrus said with a confident smirk. She ordered the invasion to begin. The first wave of Vatheri warships entered Earth's orbit, blocking out the sky over major cities. Their soldiers, clad in black armor, descended in dropships. Plasma cannons fired, buildings crumbled, and chaos spread across the planet. The Queen watched from the command deck of her flagship. "See how they scatter," she said, amused. Humans were running. Civilians screamed. Governments tried to communicate with the invaders, offering negotiations. Some soldiers fired back, but their weapons were no match for the advanced Vatheri forces. Citrus was already thinking ahead. Earth would become another colony. Its people would be enslaved. Its resources would fuel her empire. Then something happened. A human soldier, separated from his squad, was surrounded by 5 Vatheri warriors. His rifle was empty. He had no chance. But instead of surrendering, he attacked. He grabbed a fallen Vatheri weapon and fired wildly. When it overheated, he used his fists. He smashed his helmet into the face of an alien, breaking its mandibles. He was shot twice, but he kept fighting. Even as he collapsed, he pulled the pin on a grenade, taking 2 warriors with him. Citrus leaned forward, watching the footage with narrowed eyes. This was unusual. Other species, when overwhelmed, surrendered. They accepted their fate. But this human, he fought even when he had no chance of winning. It was an act of defiance. "Interesting," she muttered. Across Earth, similar stories unfolded. Civilians refused to submit. Soldiers fought back with unrelenting ferocity. Entire cities turned into battlegrounds. The humans were not fleeing. They were adapting. The Queen had expected an easy victory. Now, for the first time in centuries, she wondered, had she made a mistake? The skies above Earth burned. Vatheri warships floated like massive shadows, their cannons firing down on cities below. The invasion had begun, and Queen Citrus watched from her command deck, expecting swift victory. On the ground, Vatheri soldiers moved through the streets, their black armor reflecting fire and destruction. They marched with confidence, believing the battle was already won. At first, it seemed true. Humans were disorganized. Civilians ran in fear. Governments struggled to communicate. Police and military forces fought back, but their weapons were nothing compared to the energy-based weapons of the Vatheri. Citrus smirked as she watched her forces advance. "Weak," she whispered. But then, something changed. The first sign of trouble came from New York City. The Vatheri had secured several blocks, believing they had control. But the humans did not surrender. Instead, they vanished. They used underground tunnels, rooftops, and hidden passageways. Then, without warning, they struck. Explosions erupted from the sides of buildings. Vatheri soldiers were ambushed from above, from below, from every direction. Small human groups moved like ghosts, striking fast and disappearing before the Vatheri could react. They are using tactics, one of the generals reported. Citrus narrowed her eyes. Most species, when invaded, tried to fight head-on. But the humans were different. They didn't fight to defend. They fought to win. In Paris, resistance fighters used old catacombs to sneak behind enemy lines, attacking supply routes. In Tokyo, snipers hid in the ruins of skyscrapers, picking off Vatheri commanders. In Moscow, soldiers destroyed bridges and roads, trapping the invaders in their own landing zones. The humans fought with strategy. They turned their cities into battlegrounds, using every street, every building, every shadow to their advantage. The Vatheri were confused. They had crushed civilizations before, but never like this. Other species panicked. They surrendered. The humans, they adapted. Reports flooded in. Our forces in London are being pushed back. Our dropships are being shot down in Brazil. Our units in Washington, D.C. are missing. Missing. Citrus repeated, her voice sharp. Yes, my queen. An entire battalion. No distress signals. No remains. They just disappeared. A cold realization settled in her mind. The humans were not just fighting. They were hunting. Then something unexpected happened. A human transmission broke into the Vatheri communication network. It was a soldier, his face covered in dirt and blood. His eyes were calm. Behind him, captured Vatheri weapons were lined up ready to be used. We are not the ones trapped with you, he said, his voice steady. You are trapped with us. The screen went black. For the first time in her long reign, Queen Citrus felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Queen Citrus gripped the edges of her throne as another explosion rocked her warship. This was not possible. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to surrender. But instead, they had fought back with unbreakable will. And now, they were coming for her. A Vatheri officer rushed forward, his mandibles clicking in panic. My queen. Human forces have breached the lower decks. They err. A loud explosion cut him off. The lights flickered. The warship's alarms blared. Citrus's claws dug into the armrests. Her empire had never faced an enemy like this before. She had underestimated them. And now, they were inside her ship. Inside the flagship, Colonel James Carter moved through the darkened hallways, his rifle raised. Behind him, a team of elite human soldiers followed, their steps silent, their eyes sharp. The Queen was here. This was their chance to end the war. They had fought on Earth. They had lost friends, family, homes. But now they were on the enemy's ground. Now it was humanity's turn to strike fear. Carter's earpiece crackled. We've taken engineering. The ship's power is failing. She can't escape. Carter smirked. Good. Keep up the pressure. They moved forward, taking down Vatheri guards with deadly precision. These aliens were stronger, faster. But humans were smarter. The Queen's last stand. In the throne room, Queen Citrus could hear the humans getting closer. Her warriors were falling. Her ships were failing. She had one last choice: fight or die. Her 4 arms reached for her weapons. If the humans wanted to kill her, they would have to face her rage. The doors blasted open. Smoke filled the room. Through the haze, she saw them, the human warriors. Their leader stepped forward, his gun steady, his eyes cold. It's over, Carter said. Citrus bared her fangs. No, it has just begun. With a scream, she lunged. The final battle begins. Blades clashed, bullets flew. The fate of the war would be decided here and now. The throne room shook as Queen Citrus lunged forward, her 4 arms swinging deadly energy blades. Colonel Carter barely dodged in time. The blue glow of her weapons sliced through the air where his head had been a second ago. She was fast, stronger than any human. But Carter had fought too many battles to hesitate. He rolled to the side and fired his rifle. The bullet struck her armored chest, But the queen kept coming. With a snarl, she swung again. Carter blocked with his knife, but the force sent him crashing into a pillar. Pain shot through his ribs. The queen stepped forward, her glowing blades raised. "You are nothing," she hissed. "Your species is nothing. I should have wiped you out the moment I landed." Carter wiped blood from his lip and grinned. "Too late for that, isn't it?" Before she could strike, he threw a grenade. Citrus barely had time to react before it exploded. The force sent her flying, her armor cracked, her weapons flickering. The queen staggered to her feet, growling. She had never felt pain like this before. She had never been this close to losing. The doors burst open. More human soldiers rushed in, their weapons aimed at her. The Vatheri Empire was crumbling. The queen roared in defiance. She refused to fall. But Carter was already aiming. "Goodbye, Your Highness." Bang! A single shot rang out. The bullet struck between her eyes. Queen Citrus's body went still. Her weapons dimmed. Then she collapsed. The war ends. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, one of the soldiers whispered, "Is it over?" Carter looked at the fallen queen. The invader. The conqueror. The one who thought humans were weak. Now she was dead. He took a deep breath and nodded. "Yeah, it's over." But deep inside, he knew one thing for sure. Humans would never be seen as weak again. The skies of Earth turned red. Queen Citrus had ordered everything to be thrown at the humans. The last of her warships hovered above the ruined cities, their cannons glowing with deadly energy. This was no longer an invasion. It was extermination. Her voice echoed through every Vatheri soldier's communicator. No more mercy. Burn them all. The final battle had begun. The last stand. In the remains of Washington, D.C., human forces gathered. Soldiers, civilians, resistance fighters, everyone who could hold a weapon. Their leader, Colonel James Carter, stood in front of them. His uniform was torn, his face covered in dirt and blood, but his voice was steady. "They think they can break us," he said, scanning the crowd. "They think they can burn our world and erase our people." He raised his rifle. "They are wrong." A cheer rose from the fighters. This was their last stand. They would fight to the end. The battle rages. Vatheri dropships filled the sky, releasing waves of alien warriors. Energy blasts rained down, turning buildings to dust. But humans did not run. Snipers on rooftops picked off Vatheri officers. Fighters in the ruins used tunnels and ambush tactics. They had learned the enemy's weaknesses, and they exploited them without mercy. A massive Vatheri walker stomped through the battlefield, its cannons blasting apart defenses. A squad of human soldiers rushed forward, climbing onto its legs. They planted explosives and jumped away. Boom! The walker collapsed in flames. Inside the warship, far above the battlefield, Queen Citrus watched in disbelief. Her army was losing. Humans fought like demons. Even wounded, they refused to fall. Even dying, they took Vatheri with them. A new message flashed on her screen. More warships destroyed. More bases lost. Her claws gripped the command table. Impossible. She had thrown everything at them. And still, they fought. Then, an explosion shook her flagship. The humans had found a way up. Her eyes widened. They were coming for her. For the first time, Queen Citrus felt something cold in her chest. Not frustration, not anger. Fear. The endgame approaches. On the battlefield below, Colonel Carter watched as the enemy forces began to retreat. A slow grin spread across his face. "They're scared," he muttered. "Good." He turned to his soldiers. "This is it. We take the fight to them." The humans roared in victory. This war had started with an invasion. Now it was about revenge. Queen Citrus sat on her command throne, her claws tapping against the armrest. The invasion was not going as planned. It was supposed to be simple. Land, conquer, dominate. That was how it had always been. But humans were different. Reports continued to pour in. The resistance was growing stronger. In Berlin, a group of human soldiers had hijacked a Vatheri walker and turned its cannons against the invaders. In Mumbai, entire districts had vanished from the Vatheri scans, hidden by human technology, waiting to strike. In Sydney, an entire Vatheri command center had been burned to the ground overnight. The Queen's generals stood before her, their mandibles twitching in frustration. "They should be broken by now," one of them hissed. "But they are not," another growled. "They are learning. They are adapting too fast." Citrus clenched her jaw. This was not weakness. This was something else. Something dangerous. She turned to a holographic map of Earth. Red dots marked the locations of Vatheri forces. Blue dots showed where humans had attacked. At first, the red had been everywhere. Now, the blue was spreading. The Queen's cold reptilian eyes narrowed. "How can a species so fragile fight like this?" she demanded. One of her commanders hesitated before answering. "My Queen, humans are not fragile." Citrus scoffed. "They are soft-bodied. Their bones break easily. Their technology is far behind ours." "Yes," the commander admitted, "but their minds are their weapon." He pressed a button on the display. A new video appeared. It was taken from a Vatheri soldier's helmet cam, before the signal was lost. The footage showed a destroyed cityscape. Smoke filled the air. Suddenly, a group of humans emerged from the ruins. They were wounded, exhausted, and outnumbered. The Vatheri charged at them. Instead of running, the humans smiled. Then, an explosion. The video cut to static. The Queen's eyes flickered with understanding. These creatures were not fighting for land, not fighting for power. They were fighting because they refused to lose. She leaned back in her throne, deep in thought. Fearless, unrelenting, tactical. A new message interrupted her thoughts. It was from the battlefield in North America. "My Queen," the officer spoke urgently, "we have taken heavy losses. The humans fight even when wounded. They sacrifice themselves to take us down. We cannot break them." Silence filled the command room. Citrus slowly rose from her throne. For the first time in centuries, she was facing something unknown. And she didn't like it. Her mandibles twitched in frustration. If brute force would not work, she would need a new plan. Her eyes gleamed with dark determination. "If they will not break," she said, her voice cold, "then we will make them suffer." Queen Citrus stood before the massive war table in her flagship's command center. The holographic map of Earth flickered before her, showing Vatheri forces shrinking and human resistance growing stronger. This was not how the war was supposed to go. She had underestimated humans. That mistake had already cost her thousands of soldiers. It would not happen again. She turned to her generals, her mandibles twitching with frustration. "Enough. We have wasted time playing their game. Now we change the rules." Her orders were simple: total domination. Vatheri warships bombed entire cities, leaving nothing but ruins. Supply chains were targeted, cutting off food and medicine. They took human prisoners, not as captives, but as bait. They wanted to break human morale. At first, it seemed to work. Cities burned. Millions suffered. The Vatheri tightened their grip. But then, the humans changed again. In the mountains of Afghanistan, guerrilla fighters struck at night, vanishing into the caves before the Vatheri could retaliate. In the jungles of South America, human commandos hunted the invaders, leaving behind nothing but shredded bodies and whispers of terror. In Chicago, a group of captured humans escaped and took over a Vatheri base, using stolen weapons to destroy an entire battalion. Citrus could hardly believe the reports. "They are adapting to everything we throw at them," one general admitted, his voice uneasy. "They change their tactics every day. It's as if war is in their blood." The Queen's claws dug into the table. War was not supposed to be in their blood. Then came the most chilling report of all. Her elite void hunters, the deadliest warriors in the Empire, had been sent to destroy a hidden human base. They never returned. The only message received was a grainy video from a human soldier. His face was covered in war paint, his eyes burning with fury. He held up a broken Vatheri helmet, a trophy. His voice was low, calm, and full of something Citrus had never heard from an enemy before. "We are not the prey," he said. "We are the hunters." The video ended. A silence fell over the command center. The Vatheri generals shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, they felt fear. Citrus did not speak. She stared at the dark screen, her claws tightening into fists. Humans were not just fighting back. They were evolving. The Queen's pride burned, but she forced herself to think. This was no longer just a battle. This was survival. And for the first time in her long, bloody reign, she was not sure if the Vatheri would win. Queen Citrus sat in silence, staring at the reports in front of her. This war had become something else, something she did not expect. The humans were not just surviving. They were fighting back with terrifying precision. The Vatheri Empire had crushed countless species. Civilizations had surrendered before the might of their armies. But humans refused to break. Her generals were growing desperate. "They are everywhere," one of them hissed. "We cannot predict their movements. They strike like ghosts, and when we counterattack, they are already gone." "They are not ghosts," Citrus said coldly. "They are hunters." The humans were doing something no species had done before. They were using fear. In the ruins of Los Angeles, Vatheri patrols vanished one by one. Days later, their bodies were found hanging from streetlights, their armor stripped away. Messages were carved into the walls. "You are not safe." In the forests of Canada, a squad of Vatheri commandos sent out a distress signal. When reinforcements arrived, all they found were weapons, equipment, and the remains of an alien skull crushed under a human boot. The worst was what happened in London. The Vatheri had taken control of the city, forcing thousands of humans into containment zones. But then, the power failed. Communications went dark. For 3 nights, nothing but silence. On the 4th night, the screams began. A single human soldier had slipped inside the command post. Security footage showed him moving through the shadows, eliminating guards without making a sound. He disabled generators, shut down alarms, and turned the city against its occupiers. When the sun rose, the humans had taken back London. Not with numbers, not with firepower, with terror. Citrus watched the footage, her claws gripping the edge of her throne. This was not war. This was a nightmare. Her soldiers feared the humans. They whispered about the Dithworlders, creatures who refused to die, who laughed in the face of pain. Some Vatheri even refused to leave their bases at night. And then, another human transmission arrived. It was a woman this time. Her face was dirty, her armor scratched and blood-stained, but her eyes were cold, unshaken. "We warned you," she said softly. "You thought we were weak. You thought we would kneel." She leaned closer to the camera. "Now we will show you what happens when humans stop holding back." The screen went black. For the first time in her long reign, Queen Citrus felt something crawl into her chest. Not anger, not frustration. Fear. Queen Citrus paced inside her war chamber, her tail flicking with frustration. This war was no longer about conquest. It was about survival. Her once mighty armies were scattered, her soldiers afraid, and her control over Earth was crumbling. The humans had changed the rules. They fought in the dark, they struck with precision, and they never fought fair. They had become the monsters. Her generals stood in uneasy silence, waiting for orders. Finally, one of them spoke. "My queen, we must retreat." Citrus froze. No one had ever spoken that word before. The Vatheri did not retreat. They conquered. She turned slowly, her eyes filled with rage. "We do not flee from lesser creatures." The general swallowed. "These creatures are not lesser. Silence. The words hung in the air like a curse. No one dared to speak again. Then, a new alert flashed on the command screen. A live broadcast. From Earth. Citrus narrowed her eyes as the image loaded. A human soldier stood in front of the camera. He was wounded, his armor scratched and dented. But he stood tall. Strong. Behind him, hundreds of humans were cheering, waving captured Vathuri weapons. The soldier spoke. His voice was calm. Steady. "You came to conquer," he said. "You thought we were weak." He stepped forward, eyes burning with something Citrus had seen before. Not fear. Not desperation. Determination. "You wanted a war," he continued. "Congratulations. Now you have one." He lifted a small silver device. A detonator. Citrus's eyes widened. "Wait," she hissed. Boom. The screen cut to static. An entire Vathuri command base. Destroyed. Her generals gasped. Citrus clenched her fists. The humans had done it again. They weren't just fighting back. They were winning. The queen took a slow, deep breath. No, this war wasn't over. Not yet. She turned to her generals. Prepare the final assault. If the humans wanted to fight to the bitter end, then she would give them the bloodiest battle of their existence.